Don't judge a book by its cover, because what looked like a clean, ordinary suburban neighborhood turned out to be hiding a secret so dark, so unexpected, that even the FBI had to step in and tear away the pages. Imagine moving into a neighborhood where everything looks perfect: freshly mowed lawns, smiling neighbors, and a homeowners association that promises peace, order, and safety. But beneath this picture-perfect exterior lies something so twisted, so carefully hidden that when the truth began to unravel, it didn't just shock the residents, it pulled in federal agents, secret investigations, and an explosive showdown that no one saw coming. This is not a story of routine HOA disputes. This is the story of how one neighborhood's obsession with control collided head-on with the FBI. And what they discovered beneath the surface was darker than anyone could have ever imagined. Suburbs in America have always been sold as havens of peace. Rows of identical houses, perfectly manicured yards, and associations that keep the community looking pristine. At first glance, they look like the safest places in the world. Quiet streets where kids ride bikes and parents exchange polite greetings at the mailbox. The truth, however, is that behind closed doors, these neighborhoods often harbor secrets, power struggles, and conflicts that no glossy brochure ever reveals. The Homeowners Association, or HOA, is one of the most controversial institutions in American life. They're supposed to protect property values, maintain standards, and make sure everyone plays by the same rules. But time and time again, they become notorious for overreach, corruption, and even intimidation. Stories of HOAs fining residents for leaving a trash can out too long, or demanding people repaint their homes over minor color differences are well known. But what you're about to hear is far beyond petty rules and suburban squabbles. This story isn't about someone being forced to mow their lawn, or a fine for a garden gnome that didn't fit neighborhood standards. No, this is about a discovery so startling that it pushed an entire HOA into the spotlight of a federal investigation. What started as small, almost forgettable incidents, missing packages, strange noises at night, and whispers of something unusual under one family's property, soon grew into a storm that engulfed the entire community. Suspicion turned into paranoia, rumors turned into fear, and when federal agents arrived with unmarked cars, the neighborhood realized that their HOA wasn't just battling homeowners anymore. They were up against something much bigger. This story matters because it reveals how ordinary structures of control can sometimes conceal extraordinary corruption, and how communities can be blindsided by forces they never thought existed in their quiet, picture-perfect streets. It shows what happens when paranoia meets authority, when secrecy collides with law enforcement, and when the walls of suburbia crack open to reveal something that was never supposed to see the light of day. And as you'll soon discover, the events of this story didn't just leave scars on one neighborhood. They left lessons about power, secrecy, and how far people will go to hide the truth. It all began with little things, the kind of details most neighbors ignore. First, packages started disappearing. A family at the corner of the street reported that their online deliveries never arrived. The HOA, instead of helping, accused them of negligence. Another resident swore they heard strange metallic clanging beneath their garage at night. Again, the HOA dismissed it as imagination. But there was one homeowner, let's call him Daniel, who refused to let these things slide. Daniel wasn't new to the neighborhood, but he wasn't exactly popular with the HOA either. He'd clashed with them before over small issues: the color of his mailbox, the type of flowers in his yard, and a dispute about building a shed. To the HOA, Daniel was a troublemaker. To the residents who knew him, he was stubborn, yes, but also deeply observant. Daniel began keeping notes. Every missing package, every noise, every odd sighting. He even noticed that on certain nights, just past midnight, a set of HOA board members would meet. Not in their official community office, but in a private home, with cars parked discreetly 2 streets over so no one would notice. And then came the night that changed everything. Daniel was walking his dog when he heard something unusual. A low hum, like machinery running underground. He paused, pressed his ear to the ground near a storm drain, and the vibration was undeniable. Something was running, something powerful. The next morning, Daniel confronted the HOA president, a woman named Claire, about it. She dismissed him immediately, laughing it off, but Daniel noticed something. Her reaction wasn't annoyance. It was fear. She quickly changed the subject, reminding him that his grass was an inch too tall according to HOA rules. That was the moment Daniel knew. The HOA wasn't just incompetent. They were hiding something. Soon more neighbors began whispering. A man down the street reported seeing strangers in reflective vests entering the neighborhood late at night, but when he approached, they vanished into the shadows. A teenage boy swore he found a locked metal hatch hidden beneath overgrown bushes near the HOA's maintenance shed. Still, the HOA denied everything. They fined residents who asked too many questions. They circulated letters about community harmony and warned against spreading dangerous rumors. But the more they tried to silence people, the more convinced the neighborhood became that something was being concealed. Daniel, desperate for answers, started digging, literally. He began in his own backyard, where he'd noticed patches of grass that seemed strangely uneven, almost as if the ground had been disturbed. One night, with a flashlight and shovel, he dug until his spade hit something hard, a hollow echo. When he cleared the soil, he found what looked like the top edge of reinforced concrete. He had just enough time to scrape away part of the surface when floodlights snapped on from the HOA's patrol car. He dropped his tools, covering the site, but not before he noticed one more thing: a narrow seam, like the edge of a door built into the concrete. By morning, the patch of disturbed soil was perfectly flat again, as though nothing had ever been there, and Daniel wasn't the only one noticing. Another family reported their dog wouldn't stop barking at the storm drain. A retired engineer claimed he saw schematics, blueprints, that suggested underground construction far more complex than simple water pipes. The tension in the neighborhood grew unbearable. The HOA cracked down harder, issuing fines, warnings, and even threats of legal action against those they called troublemakers. But in the shadows, the residents whispered, meeting quietly, comparing notes, and wondering just how deep this secret went. And then, one morning, unmarked black SUVs rolled into the neighborhood. Men in plain suits stepped out, flashing badges, and without a word to the residents began speaking directly to the HOA president. The FBI had arrived. The neighbors stood frozen, watching from windows and porches as Claire's face drained of color. Daniel's suspicions were confirmed. This was bigger than anyone had guessed. But what exactly had the HOA been hiding? That answer would come soon enough. The arrival of the FBI should have settled things. It should have reassured the residents that justice was coming, that the mystery would finally be revealed. But instead, it only deepened the paranoia. The first hours were chaos. Neighbors peered from curtains as agents spread across the street. Some went directly to the HOA's private office. Others headed toward the maintenance shed. One vehicle pulled up outside Daniel's home, and two agents quietly asked him to step outside. Daniel later described their tone as calm but urgent. They weren't interested in scolding him for digging in his yard. They wanted details, every sound, every odd sighting, every note he had written down. For the first time, Daniel realized he wasn't crazy. He hadn't been imagining things. The FBI was taking his suspicions seriously. But as Daniel shared his story, the agents stopped him when he mentioned the underground hum, the hatch, and the seam in the concrete. They exchanged glances, writing furiously in their notebooks. Without confirming anything, one of them muttered, "That matches." "Matches what?" Daniel asked. But they wouldn't say. Meanwhile, the HOA president, Claire, called an emergency meeting with the board. Neighbors watched through glass windows as voices were raised and papers were shuffled in panic. Finally, Claire emerged, pale and trembling, announcing that the FBI's presence was a routine investigation into cybersecurity concerns. No one believed her. The residents had seen the unmarked vans unloading heavy equipment. They'd seen agents escorting HOA members into vehicles for private questioning. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Some said it was drugs, others said weapons, and one elderly resident swore it was espionage. The strangest part? The HOA didn't back down. Instead of cooperating, they doubled down on control. Flyers appeared on every door. Do not speak to outsiders. Do not spread rumors. Violations will result in immediate fines and possible legal action. The arrogance was stunning. Residents whispered to each other. Why was the HOA acting like it could overrule the FBI? The nights grew stranger. Residents reported hearing movement underground. More frequent now, almost frantic. One man said his basement wall vibrated as though machinery were running just a few feet away. Another woman swore she heard voices beneath her floorboards. Daniel, unable to sleep, took his dog out late one night. As he walked past the maintenance shed, he saw a glow beneath the bushes, the faint outline of that metal hatch. But before he could investigate further, a shadow moved behind him. A tall figure, one of the HOA's private security guards, stepped into the path, blocking his way. The guard didn't speak. He simply tapped the flashlight in his hand against his palm, glaring until Daniel turned back toward his home. The message was clear: stay out. But the FBI wasn't staying out. 2 weeks after their arrival, trucks rolled into the neighborhood before dawn. They parked near the maintenance shed, erected tents, and worked nonstop for 48 hours. Residents couldn't see much, but they heard drilling, metallic clanking, and even what sounded like concrete being sawed open. And then, silence. The agents packed up and drove away, and the neighborhood was left in eerie stillness. But something had changed. One resident, a teenage girl who lived across from the shed, swore she saw the agents hauling out crates, heavy ones marked only with black tape. Her parents dismissed it, but Daniel believed her. The HOA went into overdrive. Claire issued an official statement, claiming that the FBI had found nothing of concern, and that false rumors were damaging community trust. She accused residents of paranoia and hinted that fines for non-compliance with community harmony rules were about to be increased. But her mask was slipping. During one heated meeting, when Daniel directly asked her what was under the maintenance shed, Claire's voice cracked. She told him to sit down, but her hands trembled as she shuffled papers. Other residents noticed. For the first time, the HOA president looked less like an enforcer and more like someone terrified of being exposed. Just when the neighborhood began to think things might quiet down, the FBI returned, but this time not quietly. On a Saturday morning, black SUVs blocked off both entrances to the community. Neighbors were ordered to remain indoors. Agents swarmed the shed, but also, shockingly, entered several homes belonging to HOA board members. Boxes of documents were carried out. Computers were seized. Through blinds, residents watched the spectacle with hearts pounding. Children whispered about spies and secret agents. Adults exchanged fearful glances. And Daniel, watching from his porch, knew this was the turning point. If the FBI was raiding homes, then the HOA's secret wasn't just under the ground. It was in their records, their communications, and their very structure. Finally, whispers leaked. An agent, speaking quietly to a neighbor, confirmed one thing. There was indeed a tunnel, but no details were given: where it led, what it contained, or why it existed. Theories exploded. Some said it was a smuggling operation. Others believed it was a Cold War bunker. A few residents wondered if it was tied to foreign governments. The truth was maddeningly out of reach, hidden behind the FBI's silence. Claire and her board weren't finished. They called a neighborhood meeting in the community hall. The room was tense, half the residents glaring with suspicion, the other half too afraid to speak. Claire stood at the podium, voice strained but defiant. She accused the FBI of overreach. She claimed the tunnel was maintenance infrastructure, and that the government was wasting time on a witch hunt. But then Daniel stood up. With trembling hands, he revealed copies of notes he'd taken, along with blurry photos of the hatch he'd dug up. He spoke about the strange noises, the vibrations, and the late-night gatherings. His voice broke as he asked one question: if it's just maintenance, why were you so desperate to cover it up? The hall erupted. Residents shouted. Some sided with Daniel, others with the HOA. Arguments spilled into the parking lot. That night, one resident swore she saw Claire slip into a black SUV, not an FBI vehicle, but one with tinted windows that sped off into the night. By now, the neighborhood was no longer a place of peace. It was a battlefield of whispers, fear, and suspicion. The FBI was circling closer. The HOA was cracking under pressure, and beneath their feet, the tunnel waited, its secrets still sealed. But not for long, because what the FBI was about to uncover in that underground labyrinth would shock not just the neighborhood, but the nation. The raid came before dawn. Sirens off, lights low. The FBI stormed the maintenance shed with tactical teams. Residents watched from windows as agents descended into the earth through a now exposed hatch. Hours passed. Then, finally, word leaked out. The tunnel wasn't just a maintenance passage. It was a sprawling network, concrete walls and steel reinforcements stretching for hundreds of feet beneath multiple homes. Inside were storage rooms filled with documents, electronics, and equipment no one could explain. And the most shocking part? Some of it was military grade. Residents gasped as rumors spread. Encrypted computers, surveillance devices, and maps of the neighborhood with markings in red ink. This wasn't maintenance. It was surveillance on them. The HOA had been monitoring its own residents, documenting movements, cataloging behaviors, and, according to one whispered report, recording private conversations through devices hidden in basements and crawl spaces. When Daniel heard this, his stomach dropped. All those late-night patrols, all those random inspections. The HOA hadn't just been enforcing rules. They'd been building a shadow system of control. And now, it was out. Agents escorted Claire from her home in handcuffs. Cameras flashed as residents filmed from porches. Her once perfect hair was disheveled, her face pale and furious. She shouted that the FBI had no right, that the neighborhood was hers to run. But the agents ignored her. Other board members were detained too, their homes sealed off. Trucks hauled away crates of evidence from the tunnels. For hours, the neighborhood buzzed with disbelief. The HOA, once feared, once untouchable, was collapsing in real time. And Daniel? He stood quietly at the edge of his yard, watching as the truth he'd fought so hard to reveal finally saw daylight. In the weeks that followed, news vans camped outside the neighborhood. Journalists pieced together what they could. The HOA had built the tunnel decades ago, originally as an emergency shelter. But over time, the board turned it into something else. Instead of serving the community, it became a hub of surveillance and power, every resident's life cataloged, every disagreement noted, every weakness filed away. The FBI confirmed that sensitive equipment had been recovered, but the full details? Classified. For the residents, life would never be the same. The HOA was dissolved. Federal oversight replaced it temporarily. Slowly, cautiously, the neighborhood began to heal. Kids played outside again. Neighbors greeted one another without suspicion, and Daniel became something of a quiet hero. He never wanted fame. He only wanted peace. But people remembered his stubbornness, his refusal to back down, and his courage to dig when others stayed silent. If you've stayed with this story until the end, ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you have questioned the strange noises, the missing packages, and the fear in your leader's eyes? Or would you have kept your head down, hoping the storm would pass? Because sometimes the truth isn't just beneath our feet, it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. Stories like this remind us how fragile peace can be, how easily power can corrupt, and how ordinary people can stand against extraordinary forces. And if you want more stories like this, true suspense, real drama, and lessons we can all learn from, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if this was your neighborhood? Would you dig? Or would you stay silent?